Keeland, every moment matters.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room, a special edition, our Christmas edition. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News, and I'm also the Grinch of this podcast because I refuse to go out and buy an ugly sweater. Maybe next year, but I'm standing firm, guys.
Me too, Bill. Zoe calls it a jumper. I don't own a jumper or a sweater, whatever jumper means. So this is the best I can do. I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports. I was told to bring along a toddy, right? The TDN does not condone premium margaritas necessarily. So drink responsibly. But we're going to have a good time here.
Oh, Bill's got his wine.
There you go. There's my glass of wine.
Cheers. I'm Zoe Cadman with First Racing and First TV. Got Doodle here. Got some, I don't know, I look a bit like a throwback to the 80s here with some, I think I've got some reindeer ears and some snowballs on. Doodle's probably going to exit stage left. He doesn't like beer. And we're ready to roll. Bill, you lost your little bow you were wearing. Where is it?
See if I can find it.
See, he was wearing a bow. That's about...
There you go. That's the best I can do. My daughter gave me a bow, so
yeah. I don't have any chestnuts roasting, but I'm comfortable here in front of the fire. So,
all right,
ready to roll.
Well, this is going to be a special Christmas show, and we're going to have some fun with this rather than having our usual format and our guest. We asked the viewers to send in some questions to us. We got some really interesting ones that we'll go over in a little bit. Randy, myself, and Zoe will all take a look at those and see if we can give you some pertinent answers that might educate you a little bit about racing. But in the meantime, our production staff is giving us some surprise questions for our panel. And let's see if we can have fun with this. All right. First one, Randy Moss.
I think I'm going to need this first. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Randy Moss, and we want you to be totally honest with us here. Mm-hmm. What is Jerry Bailey really like off camera?
He's okay. No, we're best of friends. You know, a lot of professional athletes, not just in horse racing, but in any sport, you know, especially if they're as successful as Jerry Bailey is, when they get into the media, they don't want to work very hard. They want to just live off their personality and off their name, and they don't want to do all the homework that it takes to be really good at the job of broadcasting. Chris Collinsworth does it. Tori Aikman does it. Jerry Bailey does it. From day one in 2006, when he joined the then ESPN crew with me, I had been the sole analyst for 7-8 years. And Jerry immediately impressed everybody with his incredibly hard work. And he and I are 1 and 1A. We go together to Starbucks in the morning in the same car. We sit elbow to elbow all day long in a production trailer. We go to dinner at night. And we finish each other's sentences. So it's a great time. He's a great guy.
So now we go to Zoe. Oh, this is a good question. Zoe, are you a better jockey, TV broadcaster, or bloodstock agent?
I'm going to plead the fifth and say none of the above. Jack of all, master of none, and leave it at there.
Oh, you're not giving yourself enough credit there, Zoe. Come on.
None of the above.
All right. Well, all right. So we're back to Randy. Randy, if you could be one horse in history, who would you be?
Ooh, This is a good one. I like this.
Flightline. Then I would only have to run 6 times and I would immediately go to stud.
I'm glad you didn't say John Henry, who was gelding.
How about Secretariat?
Oh, there was nothing wrong with Secretariat.
All right, Bill, I'm reading off your next question.
You're going to read it?
I'm going to read it. Okay. What was the worst interview you ever conducted?
Unbelievably, the first interview I ever conducted when I was working in the publicity department at Monmouth Park, and maybe they were playing a prank on me, but they asked me to call Leroy Jolly. Leroy Jolly, like to speak poorly of the dead, was the most miserable, nasty person in horse racing that I've ever come across. I was like 22 years old. It was the first interview, literally the first interview I ever had. He spent 5 minutes being nasty to me and yelling at me. And I hung up the phone and thought, oh my God, what have I got myself into? But having said that, 99% of the people in horse racing are wonderful. You get in any walk of life, you get jerks. And he certainly qualified under that.
Ooh, tell us what you really think.
Let me roll this one out to you. My very first newspaper sports editor, he gave me my very first job. He told me right off the bat, the key to a successful interview is to ask dumb questions. What do you think about that?
Terrible idea.
Well, his thought was, and I used it quite often and it worked, you get more of an explanatory answer if you ask very simple, very innocent questions that don't show off anything that you know or any of your knowledge or whatever, just to get the person to give a very detailed answer. And they talk more in that regard when you don't give them a more specific question.
See, that's what you should have done, Bill.
Okay, yeah. Maybe me and Leroy could have been great questions if I followed Randy's sports editor advice. Okay, this one is for Zoe, and it is, what is the worst job you ever had?
Oh, without a doubt, this is easy. In fact, my mum was just talking about it last week when I went to England. We were talking about bartenders and waitresses, and she's like, well, you couldn't do that. I'm like, I might be able to do it now. But when I was about 14, I took a job as a waitress in the Dunkery Beacon Hotel, which is a hotel on Exmoor. So my mum had to drive me there. And I probably might have lasted an hour. I came across one very rude man, and I wasn't having that. He got soup all over him, and I left. So, and I didn't like the frilly apron and the black tights and the skirt I had to wear either. So that was the end of my waitressing career. Just one start and done.
Mine was a busboy at a fine dining restaurant. Yeah, they made me. All the waitresses who were older made all the busboys carry out these massive trays filled with all the food. And on the first week of the job, I was carrying a tray to a table, and a plate of lasagna slid off directly into the top of a lady's beehive hairdo. and that was the end of my tenure as a busboy.
All right, Randy, we'll stick with you. We want to know, what was your most embarrassing moment ever on TV?
Early. When I got my first live TV exposure, I was at Oaklawn Park in the newspaper business, and a local TV station had me come on and do a once nightly report that later on became twice nightly, once in the morning, whatever. But they told me they wanted me to wear makeup. And I had a very powerful 5 o'clock shadow, but I refused to wear makeup. I thought that was too feminine. So every afternoon before we went on for the 6 o'clock news every evening, I would run into the press box bathroom with a razor and shaving cream and shave using cold water because it didn't have any hot water. And so one time I waited a little too long, and just a few minutes before I was supposed to go on the air, I cut a chunk out of my chin right here, and it was gushing blood. And so right before we went on the air, I'm doing this. I'm pressing as hard as I can to try to stem the flow of blood. Lucy's barking, sorry. And so then we went on, and I had to drop my chin, and it was an extended report. And about 1 minute into it, the cameraman leaned out from behind the camera and went like this. And so I just kind of casually wiped my chin. I had a whole handful of blood. And I thought, the cameraman told me by the time the shot was finished, he had panned back so far that I looked like a little speck in the background. I wish somebody had saved that video, but it's gone.
Oh, we'd love to see that. All right. So we're back for me as a journalist. Who is the most cooperative person you have ever dealt with in racing? That's a good question. And again, like I said before, when I was doing my little diatribe about my good friend Leroy Jolly, that I could probably come up with about 50. But I think number one is Mike Smith. He is about the nicest man on the planet. I've known Mike since he first came to New York to ride as a young man. He came for the winter meet, And his original intention was just to ride there for a little while. And I believe then go to Oaklawn or maybe Fairgrounds or something like that. But he did so well, he never left. And then he became Mike Smith. He is an absolute sweetheart. He will do anything for you anytime. He has never, ever turned me down for an interview. And he is just one of those priceless people. And again, I could come up with 10 more, but if you ask me to come up with only number one, Mike Smith is one of my very favorite, if not my single very favorite person in horse racing.
I'll second that notion.
Yeah, I'll third that. And one of my best interviews I ever had was with Mike on Arrogate, Dubai World Cup. And I didn't even look at the race because I was so sure Mike was going to win. So they break out of the gate. I'm on the pony, supposed to do the interviews, and I rarely see the race, much like Donna. And I trotted off and I could just hear, and Arrogate is last. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And I'm like looking through the PPs because they're like, he'll never make it. He'll never make it. I'm like, I don't know anything about the rest of these horses, so it pays to really do your homework. And thank God Mike won. And he simply said it was from A to Z. It started off like Arrogate and it ended up like Zenyatta. So it was brilliant on his part. And I thank him every day for actually winning that race and scooping me out of the hole.
All right. Now, this is for all of us. And they want us to show our yearbook photos. So I don't have it with me. I think our production team is going to put up on the board, but let's take a look. There we go. That was me as a young man. And by the way, that is at the racetrack. I had an uncle by the name of Harold who owned a couple racehorses, and it was my senior year in high school. And one of them won at, I believe that's Belmont Park. And that's me smiling after the victory.
You know what? Take away the glasses, put on a coat and tie, strike that same pose, and you don't look a whole hell of a lot different, Bill.
Well, thank you, Randy. I appreciate that.
Were you held back in high school? You look like you're 40 there.
Maybe that's why he doesn't look much different now, Zoe.
I do like the mullet, though. The mullet looks good on you. Bring it back. Oh, good God.
Zoe with a beer. Imagine that.
Imagine that. So this obviously wasn't my high school photo because I don't have one. I did send you some of me when I was very young, but that's myself and Sarah Calhoun on a boat somewhere in Destin, Florida. It's when I had long hair. So yeah, my hair is actually naturally curly and it goes into ringlets when it gets quite long. That would have been like 1998 or 1999, probably 98, late 90s.
Were you riding at the time?
No, I didn't start till 2000. Okay. I did all the bad stuff beforehand. Oh, good God.
There you go. There's a fine looking young man.
Wow.
You know, in hindsight, I think I needed a little brow work, but other than that, I can live with that. I just wish I'd held on to some of that hair.
You've got a lot of hair there. Wow.
Oh,
wow.
Zoe, my barber told me my father was bald and his brother was bald. So the whole BS about it coming from the female side of your family is just that. And my barber told me is one thing you never have to worry about is winding up like your father, because there are parts of your head that will never see the light of day. Boy, was he wrong.
Boy, was he ever. Wow.
Next up, and we're going to all answer this. You have a Derby horse and can ride any rider in history. Who do you pick? I'll start Angel Cordero. With all due respect to Jerry Bailey, your partner, Randy, who I thought was one of the greatest jockeys in the history of the sport, I still think that Angel Cordero was the best jockey that I've seen in my time covering horse racing. He could do things on a horse that nobody else could do. He understood the mechanics of a race as well as anybody. And Jerry Bailey is obviously a talented rider, but I think his greatest asset is his smarts. Angel Cordero is both very smart and also an extremely aggressive rider. I like those kind of riders, and Angel would be my pick.
Go ahead, Randy. I'm still thinking.
All right. Well, I can't say Jerry Bailey because then people would accuse me of bias. So I'm going to disqualify Jerry Bailey from my answer. And Jerry rode with him, but I never saw him ride. Eddie Arcaro. Jerry didn't actually ride with him. I just like to tease Jerry about that. You know, he was aggressive as well, very aggressive. In fact, he got set down for, I think, a year at one point for purposely trying to put a guy over the rail. And obviously, one of the most phenomenally successful riders of all time. If the purse money available today had been available when he was riding, no telling how much money Eddie Arcaro would have won. And he wound up a TV analyst.
Well, I'm going to have to go with Jerry Bailey then. Just because when I first came to this country, he was the absolute man. It would actually be very close with Jerry and Johnny V. Johnny's still riding today, obviously. It would be pretty close for them because they're both very aggressive, tactical riders. And they just have brilliant ways of seeing a race before anything happens in front of them. They're just sharp and reactive, which is what I love.
Boy, Randy, you went old time. Why didn't you come up with Isaac Murphy or something? You couldn't come up with Eddie Arcaro, man.
I could have. That's a pretty good thought. Well, you look at history. You look at all the major races won by jockeys, and he almost stands alone. He was unbelievable.
So this is the final question for everyone. If you can only eat one racetrack food for the rest of your life, what is it? I have to think about this. So Zoe,
Easy.
you go first.
Red beans and rice and bread pudding at the fairgrounds. No question.
All right. I haven't spent enough time at the fairgrounds. I love red beans and rice and bread pudding. I would say the corned beef sandwich and nachos with jalapenos at Keeland.
Okay, I have a really off the wall answer to this, but this is what I think. Back 25, 30, 35 years ago, Foxborough Raceway, which was a harness track, tried a thoroughbred meet. It lasted about 3 weeks before they went out of business. Foxborough was where the Patriots played, the same complex, but it was owned by a restaurateur who had a gourmet restaurant, and he brought in the same kind of staff and people to run the dining room at this little crappy racetrack, which ran thoroughbreds. You look all over, ask 1,000 people if they've ever seen thoroughbred racing at Foxborough Raceway, and you won't find anybody but me. But it was worth going for the food. It was absolutely delicious. And now poor New England, after all this, has no racetracks, and you have no idea how sad that makes me.
Wow. So I have a question for you. Having spent many a day with NFL Network in my 13 years there, at Foxborough, at what they call Patriot Place now. Was the Foxborough racetrack on that site?
Oh, absolutely. It's right behind the stadium.
Wow.
And for a while, they were both there until they closed up the racetrack.
Really?
And tore it down. Yeah. It was, kind of like, the Meadowlands or complex with the hockey arena across the street,
right,
and the football stadium, and then the racetrack right there, all pretty much on the same property. Yeah, that was the case. There was a racetrack there.
Holy cow.
Primarily it was a harness track, and like virtually so many other harness tracks, it's long gone.
I never knew that. And Robert Kraft came in when he bought the Patriots and turned all that property into retail establishments right behind the stadium, which is phenomenally successful. As you know, they call it Patriot Place.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. See, we learned something today.
Yeah.
Do want to remind you that the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeland. Now, as this is our last podcast of the year, let's talk about some of the records that Keeland set this year. We'll start off with the September yearling sale that achieved the highest gross ever at a thoroughbred sale of over 531 million. In September, there were a record 56 yearlings who sold for $1 million or more. The sale featured the highest average and the highest median, which is most important of all. In November, the sale grossed more than any sale since 2007 and also established a record average and median once more. The Wheeling Topper by Gunrunner was the highest selling Wheeling since 2015 at 2.2 million. Also the first one that Amazadan bought. Quite a year for Keeland indeed. We'll be right back after this message from Keeland.
We do this so your granddaughter can work on a farm someday. So the stands will still be packed in 50 years. That's why we come to work every day, obsess over every single detail. Because the story of racing is written one moment at a time. And the future of our industry deserves nothing less. Keeland, every moment matters.
Normally for this podcast, we bring you the fastest horse of the week based on the top buyer speed figure of the week. But now we're doing the year-end podcast, so it will be the fastest horse of the year, brought to you as always by the Fast Sires at WinStar Farm. And in 2026, those WinStar sires will include 3 new recruits, each of whom have a top career buyer speed figure of over 100. First of all, 107 was the top buyer speed figure for Straight No Chaser. Last year, 2024's champion sprinter who won the Breeders' Cup Sprint, he'll stand at WinStar for $10,000. He had 4 career buyer speed figures of triple digits. Next, with the career buyer of 106, Mulligan, who won the Grade 1 Forego Stakes, also the Grade 2 John Nehrude Stakes. He also had buyers of 105, 104, and 102. He'll stand for $10,000 at WinStar. He's a son of violence. And then, last but certainly not least, Patch Adams, the impeccably well-bred son of Into Mischief, a multiple Grade 1 winner with the career high buyer speed figure of 103. Patch Adams will stand at WinStar for a fee of $30,000. And now the fastest horse of the year. Go back to the Travers Stakes at Saratoga. The 10-length victory by Derby and Belmont winner Sovereignty earned a buyer speed figure of 115, which is not only the fastest buyer speed figure of 2025, it's also the fastest buyer speed figure of the last 7 years by any horse not named Flightline. That's how good Sovereignty was as a 3-year-old this year, and hopefully we'll see him next year. The fastest horse of the year.
So here's our next segment. A little drink first, please.
Okay.
Cheers.
I'm running out.
We had asked.
I would have drunk my bottle of wine, but I'm still my 2 bottles of wine from Randy, but I'm still yet.
Did he finally pay you?
No, not yet. Not yet.
No.
Not yet. I'm hoping I'll catch up, but I keep getting farther behind.
Okay, so on previous podcasts, we asked our listeners and viewers to write in some questions for the team. We got some really good ones, and I'll read them. This is from Tim Mazanik. If the industry will start over again, given a blank slate, what would be the schedule? Forget about tradition, but assume that the meets would stay in place. Okay, he keeps going on. Would the Triple Crown be the first Saturday of the month? And when would the Breeders' Cup be? I think Randy and I will agree with this. I think it's very important to change the Triple Crown. And I absolutely would make the Triple Crown on the first Saturday of May, June, and July. When would the Breeders' Cup be? No need to change that. The first Saturday in November works absolutely fine. And I don't think even if they change the Triple Crown that the last race would go off in July. I don't think that would affect the Breeders' Cup one bit.
No.
No, you could have the Travers and the Pacific Classic first week in August or first week in September, per se.
You know, over the decades, one of the major problems in horse racing has always been that horse racing has tried to ignore the laws of supply and demand. Way back in the day when you could just open up a racetrack and be financially successful, you had all these racetracks running on top of each other in the Northeast when they didn't necessarily have to. And now you've got a horse shortage, and yet you've still got these racetracks like Gulfstream trying to run year round, right? So I think if you could start from scratch and do it over again, you would have meetings. If you had one commissioner that had, uber power, you would have race meetings that are substantially shorter at a lot of tracks than what they are now. And you would have stake schedules that would be coordinated. But, that obviously doesn't happen.
All right. So Tim continues the second question. He says, currently the schedule of the Grade 1s and the elite Grade 1s are like the streets of Boston. They were developed haphazardly with no thought put into it. I agree very much. There needs to be more coordination. But I would also add, and this is kind of segues or follows what Randy just said, we need fewer graded stakes races. There's not enough good horses to go around to fill all these races. I don't know if it's a graded race or not, but just on a recent podcast, we were talking about the Bob Hope Stakes being canceled because 3 horses entered. And then there was the stake at Del Mar on the Native Diver, is it, with right before Thanksgiving, 5 horses in that. We do not have enough horses to fill these stakes races, and I think you could get rid of about 25 or 30 of them, and the sport would be better off.
And I keep looking. Every time I look up, there's a new Breeders' Cup Win and You're In that starts next week. We've already spoken about how many of the Win and You're Ins there are, but I mean, they're already starting. Like in January, I keep reading, oh, there's one popping up in Peru. There's one over here. There's one over there. I'm like, my goodness me. They're everywhere.
I would tell Tim that a lot of thought actually does go in to stake schedules. For example, at NYRA, they put in a tremendous amount of thought in which stakes go at Aqueduct in the winter, into what's going to be Belmont in the spring, and then on to Saratoga, and then back to Belmont, and then back to Aqueduct. A lot of thought goes into coordinating stakes races to make sure that the preps run at the right time of the year for the Whitney, let's say. But it's just only in New York. That's all they think about, right? And that's all they really need to think about. They're concerned about what's best for NYRA. They don't look at what's best for the entire sport of horse racing. The same goes with Churchill Downs. The same goes with every other racetrack, right? They tailor their stake schedule and their dates based on what's best for their own provincial interests and not what's best for horse racing as a whole. So if we had a league office, let's say, with any kind of power, which is never going to happen, but if we did, then you could kind of solve that problem by coordinating racing dates as well as stake schedules.
All right, the next question is from Jonathan Hollenberger. He says, I love the paddock, especially being there when I have a horse in the race. Other than being dappled out, I have no idea how to evaluate which horses are looking good, bad, fit, eager, exhausted, ready, etc. What tips and sources can the groups point to for how a horse player can effectively evaluate horses just by looking at them? Yeah, Zoe, but first I want to tell a story why I don't even bother. That I was working at Bowie Racetrack for the Daily Racing Forum, the late, great Bowie Racetrack. And I had circled some horse. I was waiting for him to come back. I loved his last race. Back then, horses actually ran every 2 weeks. So I had to wait about 2 weeks. Now, Bowie, of course, ran in the winter, and it was about 9 degrees out. The horse comes on the track, and he's washed out from head to toe. I said, oh, my God, this horse looks bad. I'm not betting on him. I can't bet a penny on this thing. He won and paid $21.60. And I decided I never again will try to look at a horse and figure something out. I'll leave it to the experts like Ms. Cadman.
Well, there's many. So basically, Bill, what you should have done was gone and asked somebody or listen and say, hey, does this horse always do that? Because you have to compare the individual. So say you're watching the Breeders' Cup or you're there down by the rail and you see someone with the horse. Hey, does that horse always get hot and sweaty? Perfect example, Highland Reel. Hot and sweaty. If he wasn't hot and sweaty, he'd have been dying or something. Another example, do you remember when Sovereignty in the spring, Derby week, if I heard another person say this horse is hot and sweaty, I was going to just throw a rock at the TV or something, because Sovereignty at that time got hot and sweaty. He won the Derby. He's since grown up. So it's basically, is that normal for the horse? As far as how does a horse look, all of us knows what a good looking human being is, right? So if you can look at a human and be like, wow, he's fit, she's fit, that guy looks like he can run a marathon. Look at the horse and kind of figure out the same way. You're going 6 furlongs. Does the horse look like a chunky, good-looking man or a chunky, good-looking female that could sprint? It's not too dissimilar from people. So you want them to be healthy and bouncy. Another thing you could take in is, how are they when they first walk over? If they're going a little bit crazy, are they better once the tack goes on? A lot of times horses feel really good, but once the blinkers go on, the tack goes on, they're there and they're like, okay, I need to settle down and figure out what's going on. So that's another thing. One other thing you could do at perhaps a Class A racetrack is stand at the winner's circle. See what kind of horses walk into the winner's circle. Like if you're there on a stakes day and it's all stakes horses, go to the winner's circle and take a look at these horses. They come in all shapes and sizes, but most of them aren't going to be my size. Grade 1 winners aren't usually my size. There are the exceptions, but they're generally a bigger, good-looking horse. And that will be the best advice, is to go and stand at the winner's circle and take a look at those suckers when they come in. I can remember when Zulu Kingdom walked over for a stake at Saratoga, his first race in the country. And I was watching them walk over and I'm like, God, who's that midget? And he had the banged off tail like Chad Brown likes to do, Bobby Frankel style. I'm like, God, yeah, no, tiny, crossed him off. Turf horses don't ride them off for their size or anything. They can be diminutive. They can be teeny. Look at English Channel. And of course he parked that day. So turf horses are a different kettle of fish. They come in all shapes and sizes. I'll never forget the first time I saw English Channel, or perhaps the only time, was when he ran in the Arlington Million. And he walked into the paddock and I'm like, good God, he's about 14.3. And the track was bottomless that day. I'm almost positive it was a million. And he won. And I was like, wow, there is no way on God's green earth that I thought just looking at that horse, he would have won a race, and he did. It's a tough
What I tell people all the time, Zoe, and I've gotten this question a ton, and it's not my specific area of expertise, but I try to tell them that, and this might be controversial, unless you go to the racetrack very often, you're better off not paying a whole lot of attention to what you think you see early, because it's all about how a horse looks today compared to how a horse looks before the last time he or she ran.
All right, we move on. This is a question from Pamela Bora. Could you answer the question of whether or not one veterinarian was allowed to make the scratch of White Barrio with 5 minutes to post? Should this not be a consensus of 3 veterinarians at a minimum? And who can make a scratch pre-race? Just one vet, or does a team collectively look at all the accumulated data over the weeks and months preceding the race? I believe that it's, in this particular instance, it was a scratch from just one vet. Perhaps though, like they have the 3 stewards and that they have to have a vote among the 3. Maybe it would be a good idea to have 3 vets. But Randy, I'm not sure. Do you know the answer to this?
Well, I mean, there's really not enough time to convene a conference of 3 veterinarians on the racetrack as the horses are warming up with 5 minutes to post. In the case of White Barrio, there was one veterinarian who thought he saw that White Barrio was off in his left front. He notified the official track veterinarian who was in charge, who came over, thought he saw the same thing, called the stewards, recommended a scratch, and then it was the stewards who had to make the final decision on whether to scratch him or not. But what stewards, Zoe, are going to get advice from 2 veterinarians that a horse should be scratched and not scratch him? That's just not going to happen.
No, not going to happen whatsoever. And, win, lose, of draw. I know they've posted pictures of him jogging on the racetrack and he looks fine now. Horses can wake up and have a bad day sometimes. They might sleep funny. I don't know I'm not even going to get into it. It's not worth it. But there was a lot of thought that went into it. And if 2 vets are telling you the horse is off and you're the steward, if I'm the steward, I'm going to listen to the 2 vets and scratch the horse.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
Definitely. All year long, our guest of the week has been brought to you by Gainesway, who is the home of a new stallion in 2026 by the very familiar name of Locked. Locked, a multiple grade 1 winning son of Gunrunner, was excellent, made headlines right off the bat in his career debut at Saratoga. Got a buyer speed figure of 96. That was the fastest by a 2-year-old in a maiden race at Saratoga in a decade, since 2015. He also won graded stakes races every year from 2 to 4 as a 2-year-old, the grade 1 Breeders' Futurity, 3-year-old, the grade 2 Cigar Mile, 4-year-old, he freaked in the grade 1 Big Cap, the Santa Anita Handicap, ran off the TV screen in that one. Locked retires with earnings of over $1.9 million. He won or placed in 10 of 11 starts. And best of all, his initial stud fee at Gainesway, $35,000. Gainesway, power, passion, performance.
And it's lights out. Locked, pouring it on, running aggressively through the stretch to win by 7 easy lengths.
Here is Locked. Locked racing by on the outside for the lead. Locked, the wine steward, it is Locked.
Here comes Locked after Mulligan. Locked catching with every single stride, and Locked will win the Cigar Mile.
It's all about Locked dominating the big cap, cruising home to an effortless 8-length romp.
So we continue with more questions from our readers, our viewers, etc., and some very good ones here. And this one is from Carol Salvaggio. She says, I am a new fan and appreciate this chance to ask pretty and amateur questions. I look forward to your show every Wednesday. I am learning. What difference is there, if any, for when a jockey rides a turf or dirt horse? And do some jockeys specialize in turf? Now, I'm going to take this one first, Randy.
All right.
Yes, of course there is. I mean, as great a rider as Jerry Bailey is, he was really, really good on turf race. But I am going to have the opinion that this is overrated. And let me give you an example. The jockey right now who everybody is raving about as a turf jockey is Hector Berrios out in California. Matter of fact, there was a headline in a newspaper the other day. It says, on Del Mar grass course, Berrios is a cut above. So I looked up his statistics for 2025. He does win 21% on the turf, but he wins 19% on the dirt. I'm not saying there aren't some that are better than others on the turf, but I have always thought this was overrated. I mean, could Jerry Bailey not ride on the dirt? Of course not. He was a great jockey on both surfaces.
Yeah.
Zoe?
I mean, if you're looking for differences in style, I think if you are going to be a very good turf rider, you've got to have a little bit of patience, because dirt races go fast early and slow late. Turf races go slow early and fast late. You have to have the patience to sit in the pocket, which is why a lot of bug riders don't win a lot of turf races. They might do if they send them to the lead, because you're getting the weight break and people think 2 turns on turf, they're just going to send the bug boy to the lead. But they generally don't have the patience to save ground and sit in the pocket. And that is the key to winning a turf race. You'll look at Flavien Prat, very good on the grass. He's equally as good on the dirt because he's an adaptable rider. There are some, like if you're looking at Paco, I'm sure Paco Lopez's stats are equally as good on the turf, but I'm going to say he's probably a better rider on the dirt because he's more aggressive. A bit more aggression lends itself very well to dirt racing. A bit more patience lends itself very well to turf racing. And that, to me, is the end of it.
I told you all the time, I've spent elbow to elbow with Jerry Bailey over the last 20 years. We've actually been a team for 20 years now. And I've heard him say this numerous times. You get these jockeys, for example, I'm not going to name names, that come over from England, present company excluded, and they're accustomed to riding on turf, where, as you just said, Zoe, patience is rewarded. Okay. And Jerry contends that in moments of pressure, Kentucky Derby, Grade 1 stakes races, big pressure, that jockeys will tend to fall back, even subconsciously, on what they are most familiar with. And a jockey that's more familiar with turf racing will fall back in moments of pressure on going backwards, whereas jockeys who are more schooled in dirt racing will fall back on going forward. And that is one of the primary differences when you're riding on dirt.
Zoe, were you better on turf or dirt?
I loved riding the grass. Let me sit in the pocket all day long. And sure, you'll get beat a few times, but there is no better feeling than sitting in the pocket, cutting the corner when some moron comes off the rail and beating them right on the wire. There is absolutely no feeling like it.
You sound exactly like Bailey.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly like Bailey.
Absolutely. Look, if you can ride the perfect race and nail someone on the wire, I can't tell you the amount of times I've took a beer into the shower after I got done riding and was like, yes, having nailed someone, nailing the leading rider. And that is the thing as a jock, or at least for me, having a beer in the shower. Obviously, I didn't drink that much beer because I was watching my weight, but having a beer in the shower after the last race was a definite treat for me.
This next question is from Vandy Griff from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I love the TDN Writers Room podcast. Thank you very much for saying that. I never miss an episode. Bill has been soliciting questions for the upcoming holiday year end. I have a question for the team having to do with handicapping. The team frequently makes picks on races, and Bill always plays in the handicapping contest on the Down the Stretch podcast on Sirius XM Radio. I've often wondered how the team handicaps a race. Not super in depth, obviously, but basically when they are handicapping a race and pull up the PPs, what is the first thing they each look at? What do they each consider? A couple of the key things to look for. Is it speed, class, form, connections, etc.? Randy, you're one of your very specialties is handicapping. I'll let you start with this one.
Hey, well, I'm down 2 bottles of wine to Zoe on handicapping. So, Zoe, go ahead and I'll follow you.
I'm going to say the number one thing to look for is conditions of the race. There are a lot of very good racing secretaries nowadays that can really, really get pretty technical with the conditions. So it would behoove you to read them. Some of them will be like non-winners of a race since October the 3rd must not have won $25,000 twice. So you need to generally look at each horse and see who best fits the condition. Who was this race written for? Because a lot of the times, some of the leading trainers might lean on a racing secretary and be like, hey, I've got this horse been sitting on the bench for 5 weeks. I really need this race to go. And they'll write the condition around a horse or said horse and see if it fills. And then the race will fill and you'll be like, oh, look, this horse just fits the condition. Maybe that's the way I want to lean. So always look at the conditions. Always look at the sexes of the horses. Sometimes you've got fillies against the boys. And then for me, look at the weights of the race. Usually there's not too much disparity with the weights nowadays, but sometimes you'll have a bug rider riding a filly who's getting an 11-pound break in weight somehow. So that would be the first thing that I would look at.
All right. Bill, Zoe, what do you think I would look at first when I'm handicapping a horse race?
Buyer figures.
Absolutely. Any kind of speed figures. A horse race is just the amount of time it takes horses to run from point A to point B. And speed figures measure that. And if one horse consistently runs faster from point A to point B than the other horses in the field, then that's where you need to start. It's not the be all and the end all. I think Andy Beyer wrote that back in the day, and he's kind of come off that a little bit. There are a lot of other factors to consider. There have been books written. We could go, multiple podcasts on the art of handicapping. It's more than just speed figures. But I think you need to start with which horses are inherently faster than other horses. You could have a horse that fits, that checks all the boxes. But if he's, 5 lengths slower than several other horses in the field, then you can't realistically think, all things being equal, that he's got as good of a chance to win.
So like Randy, I look at the speed figures quite a bit. I look at both the Beyer figures and Thoroughgraph, and I'll differ from him a little bit in this. One thing I do take into account is I'm not looking for the horse that just ran the huge number last time out.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a horse that has just peaked. I'm looking for, and it goes into the bounce theory. I'm looking for horses that are on the verge of running their best race. And some of my biggest scores over the year have been throwing out horses that I just think, they ran a 111 Beyer last time out, and their previous best Beyer in their career was a 98. I'm throwing that horse out, even if everybody else in the field runs, 102 Beyers. Sometimes you're totally wrong about that, but I'm trying to figure out who is the improving horse in the race. And I don't want the horse that has already run his best career race. I want the horse that is about to run his best career race. So that's my little piece of advice.
That's a good philosophy. And if you use speed figures, you have to always ask yourself, how was that speed figure earned? If a horse is running a mile and a 16th and he has post position number 1 and he saves ground all the way into the stretch and gets through along the inside and runs a career best buyer, and now he's stuck in the 11 hole and he's going to get caught 4 wide around the first turn, no, he's not going to run that same speed figure back again. If a horse gets loose on a sloppy racetrack for the first time in his life and freaks and runs a huge buyer, and now he's on a fast track and he's got competition for the lead, no, you can't expect him to run that fast again. So you've got to look at nuances. But I think you start with the fix. The TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, the PHBA. Just 2 more stakes races for 2-year-old Pennsylvania breds left on the calendar for 2025. In this case, they're for horses Pennsylvania bred and Pennsylvania sired. They will both take place on December 30th at Parks, the $75,000 Wait For It Stakes for 2-year-olds and the $75,000 Misbehavior Stakes for 2-year-old fillies. To learn more about that Pennsylvania bred program, you can contact Brian Sanfrantello at 610-444-1050 or just log on to pabred.com.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The stallion awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. This year, 8 breeders are on track to earn over $200,000 in breeders awards, and 2 could hit the $1 million mark. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses, with thousands of exclusive morning workouts, all at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart, bet smart with First TV.
It's time for the first TV work of the week, and it's not really the work of the week, it is the work of the year, brought to you by First TV. We're going to go back in time, not too far back, to October the 25th at Keeland. Many thanks to Keeland for getting this. It's on the First TV website. We take a look at the Breeders' Cup Sprint champ Ben Tornado working in 49-2. Now, this is a perfect example of it's not how fast you're going, it's how you're going fast. 49-4 or 2 for Ben Tornado there. Is pricking backwards and forwards. Just an absolute picture. This is the work that sold me on him winning the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Now, Ben Tornado is by Valiant Minister, who only won 1 race, trained by Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. He's a son of Candy Ride Valiant Minister. And Ben Tornado sold for $680,000 at the OBS June sale, the highest graduate at that time. He's a good horse, and he showed it 2 for 2 this year. Ben Tornado, the first TV work of the year.
Okay, we move on to, by the way, this is off. I didn't have to go to the bathroom. I just need to change my shirt.
Are you going to spin around like Wonder Woman?
Oh, is that Bookham Dano? Oh.
Yeah. And it's a real Bookham Dano, not a Hawaii 5-0.
Oh, love that.
Oh, it's the horse Bookham Dano. I love it on a surfboard.
Yeah. I have gotten so much grief through the years for wearing not only T-shirts, but especially my collection of Bookham Dano T-shirts, of which were Hawaii 5-0 T-shirts. Now I've got the Mona Lisa of Bookham Dano T-shirts. Look at this. Isn't that cool?
Oh.
My man Bookham Dano. Now, so I'm wearing this because the first question is, who was your favorite horse in Bookham this year? That is the easiest question I've ever had to answer in my entire life.
Can I bet on that?
It's Bookham Dano, who is, I hope, will be the sprint champion of 225. But I mean, I've always been infatuated with this horse, particularly because of his blue collar roots and the fact that he's a Jersey bred, and I'm a big Jersey guy. So here's my shirt. And if he doesn't win this in Saudi Arabia, maybe I'll put it on eBay and he can buy it off me for $15 or something.
That was a 1 to 10 shot.
Okay.
Go ahead, Zoe.
I'm going to go with the old man, the old gray horse, Love Sick Blues. Now, he's only won 2 races this year. Liberato Barocio trains him. I was going with Sierra Leone. I'm like, no, I love that gray horse. He's just such a cool dude. 7 years old, grade 1 winner this year. If you think, go back to October the 30th, 2020. Steve Miardi was training him. He ran in a maiden 12-5 claimer at Golden Gate Field and got beat. He was second that day. Yes, he wound up breaking his maiden for $16,000, not in a maiden race, an A other than $16,000 claimer, and broke his maiden. But he's just such a really cool horse that is now a grade 1 winner this year. So I have to root for Lovesick Blues. Watching him work in the morning, watching him train, you can always see him. He's just a cool dude to be around. So it's going to be him.
I could see that. I could totally see that. That's cool. You know, we always joke about, or I always joke about my favorite horses, right? I mean, you guys have gone along with that. Senor Buscador, Derma Soracake, right? So they didn't run this year. They're gone. They're retired. I kind of really started rooting for She Feels Pretty. The horse trained by Cherie DeVoe, 4-year-old filly. Once Cherie put the blinkers on, She Feels Pretty, late last year in 2024. She just transformed from a really good horse into a really, really good horse. And sometimes, like in the Breeders' Cup, the distance might have been just a little beyond her peak distance, her preferred distance, 1 3/8 miles, but she still always ran her heart out. Since the blinkers went on, she only lost twice. She lost once to Excellent Truth in the Diana when she was spotting 4 pounds to Excellent Truth. And then she lost to Gazora in the Filly and Mare Turf at 1 3/8 miles. Roy and Gretchen Jackson owned her. It's the best horse they've owned since Barbaro way back in 2006. So they had a little karma going for them there. Johnny Velasquez rode her in each of her 13 career starts. How many times do you see that nowadays?
Yeah.
So I really, I got a kick out of following the career of She Feels Pretty, which is now over, by the way.
All right. So the next question, what was your favorite race this year? Again, not necessarily the best race. Randy, why don't you take that one?
The Saudi Cup. I thought it was the most entertaining, best race run of the year at any racetrack in the world. Thought it was amazing. And if I had been in the press corps at the White House this past week when the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, showed up, I would have not only asked him about Khashoggi, I would have asked him what he thought about the ride of James McDonald on Romantic Warrior in the Saudi Cup. I mean, what an unbelievable race that was for both horses. And of course, it was punctuated in the end by the fact that Forever Young comes back and beats the best of our older horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Zoe?
Well, that's where I'm going to land the Classic. It was purely the build-up to the Classic and the agony with Sovereignty scratching, but all the other horses still being in. And you got 1, 2, 3 from the Derby the last 2 years being in there was just, to me, terrific. That was the race of the year. And, I could have been a bit more original, but for me, that was definitely it. And it probably wasn't so much the race. It was just the fact. It was so great to see so many good horses that ran their guts out last year being kept in training. And hopefully that's going to be a theme that just keeps continuing on. So we have rooting interest for the 2-year-old year, the 3-year-old year, and the 4-year-old year, which for me would be absolutely marvelous. We're all getting older. Our memories aren't quite so good as they used to be. Wouldn't it be easier to remember a horse you've watched the last 2 years and try and think of one that just popped up on the scene? So for me, the build up and then the race was terrific. And I actually did just watch back the Claiming Crown, the Classic. That was a really good race. 14 horses in there, and all of them found across the track at Churchill Downs going into the 16th pole was pretty remarkable. If you've not seen it, go and watch it again.
All right, Bill. So what was Bookham Dano's best race?
That would have been the Alfred Vanderbilt, by the way. But anyways, I agree with Zoe. The Breeders' Cup Classic was the best race. But just have a little bit of thought outside the box. I would say any race that involved both sovereignty and journalism. This was the best rivalry we've seen in a sport in a long time that just doesn't have rivalries anymore because horses don't run enough and they don't run against each other. When was the last time we saw two horses like this, two absolutely very, very good horses go head to head? And there is a little bit of an affirmed Alidar analogy to this in that one horse poor journalism couldn't beat the other horse, Sovereignty. But those were two of the best 3-year-olds that we've seen in a long time. And if journalism, thank goodness he's coming back next year. If he had been born in any other year, he had been horse of the year this year.
And I almost said the Preakness just because of what happened and all the conversation and all the debate that race generated.
What horse are you most excited to watch again next year besides Sovereignty? Journalism to me is an obvious answer. But I'll give you, I'm trying to think a little bit outside the box. I want to see what a horse by the name of Disco Time does next year. Brad Cox has been very careful with this horse, really hasn't run him in any major stakes races. He's only won one grade 3. I mean, he ran in all things the St. Louis Derby at Fairmount Park. But he is 5 for 5. He's improving every time out. Brad Cox is a master trainer. Is he a Fairmont Derby horse or is he a Pegasus World Cup horse? We'll find out.
Go ahead, Randy.
No, Disco Time. The people of Collinsville, Illinois, were very impressed with Disco Time when he won the St. Louis Derby, and he looked good. He ran a big number. Nothing wrong with that. If you look at the Breeders' Cup Classic, which was the best race of 2025 run in the continental United States. The top 3 finishers all came back from 2024. Sierra Leone's been retired. Fierceness has been retired. Mindframe, down the list a little bit, has been retired. The two that jump out that haven't been retired are Forever Young and Journalism. So I think other than, I can go with Bill's Disco Time, but other than that, I think it would be one of those two horses. The Japanese horse, he's supposedly going to run and maybe be rematched with Romantic Warrior in the Saudi Cup, and then point for the Breeders' Cup Classic again in 2026. And Journalism obviously is trying to get there as well. So Zoe, I think one of those two.
I'm with you. I'm going to throw in Baeza as well. So Forever Young, Journalism, Baeza. Either he's just going to plateau or he's going to get better. And if he gets better, he's still just such a baby, and that's kind of how John trains his horses. It takes them a while to come into themselves. Look at Zenyatta. So his best year is ahead of him, Baeza.
But John is not a patient trainer.
Not a patient trainer. Do not call John a patient trainer. That is the worst insult you could possibly give the man. The best thing you could probably say to John was like, John, God, you are so impatient. And he's like, oh, thank you, Zoe. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
All right, so we wrap this up with the final question. What moment in racing this year made you remember why you love the sport? And I'll go back to my friend Bookham Dano. I've had a lot of favorite horses over the year, but for whatever reason, I haven't had Easy Go or Holy Bull were my two favorite horses of my professional career riding. And then, of course, Secretariat. And then the ill-fated Timely Rider, because I was a fan in college and went to Suffolk Downs every single chance I got. And he looked like a horse that was going to come out of Suffolk Downs and actually be a major threat in the Kentucky Derby until he tragically broke down. But of course, it's Bookham Dano for me. I haven't had a favorite horse in a long time. I'm biased, and all this Bookham Dano stuff I keep saying on the show. It's not a shtick. It's not an act. I really like this. As a matter of fact, I'm going out with his owner tonight for dinner, and I'm going to make him pay. I mean, the horse is worth probably $2 million. I'm not paying for damn dinner tonight. I'm going to make him pay. But, he just, to be, I don't know how close you guys follow New Jersey racing, but the Jersey bred program is in disarray because all there is 60 days of racing in Monmouth Park, where you have places like parks that run year round. So what would you rather have, a Pennsylvania bred or a New Jersey bred? It's a no-brainer. They're down to a very small foal crop. And for New Jersey bred to, I believe, be in position to win an Eclipse Award, he was the one that put a big smile on my face.
Have you met him yet, Bookham Dano?
I have not. No, I'll have to take care of that next year.
You need your picture made with Bookham Dano.
There you go. All right.
Wearing your shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And holding a surfboard.
Right.
That was before they didn't go to the Breeders' Cup, obviously.
Matter of fact, they gave me a hat too. And on that, they have the jockey holding a surfboard as he's riding the horse. I wonder if Heisa would find Paco Lopez for trying to hit a horse with a surfboard. I think
All
they
right.
probably would.
Bill, can I ask you a question that you wouldn't want to be asked?
Okay. I'm a little nervous.
If it weren't Bookham Dano, how critical would you have been about the decision to skip the Breeders' Cup Sprint with an otherwise very sound, in-form horse?
Okay. I am critical of it. I have some insights on this. And I believe they handled the situation rather poorly. The reason, matter of fact, an article came out in some other publication, not the TDN, thank goodness, that they skipped the Breeders' Cup because they couldn't get Paco Lopez to ride that. That was absolutely complete nonsense. It was, and it was a terrible excuse and it made them look bad. The horse has some problems. That's the real story of it. And they should have been more honest about it. He should be fine for next year. They're pointing for the Saudi sprint race, but again, we talk about, and this is just me thinking and guessing because the trainer and owner, even though I know them, the whole crew pretty well, they're not going to admit this. I don't think they thought they could pass the vet at the Breeders' Cup. Considering all the discussions we had about how stringent the Breeders' Cup vets were. But I don't think that was handled particularly well. I think they should have been more transparent about it. But I think that the real answer was that the horse really wasn't right for the Breeders' Cup.
I'm glad you're going to dinner tonight and not tomorrow night.
Right.
It'll get paid for tonight. It might not get paid for tomorrow night.
All right. So my best, the most heartwarming moment of the year for me on Thursday of Preakness Week this year at Pimlico at the Stakes Barn, NBC arranged for a sit-down interview with me, Jerry Bailey, Wayne Lucas, and Bob Baffert. And especially in hindsight, given how few days Wayne had left, and I almost think that Bob had a little bit of insight into that at the time. It was quite a poignant 45 minutes that we spent all talking to each other. And Bob, sitting down for that interview, was uncharacteristically very nervous because of how he wanted to come off, because of his respect for Lucas and, what Wayne had meant to him throughout his career. And it was especially interesting for me because, like you guys, I was around back in the day in the mid 1990s, late 1990s, early 2000s, when Bob first burst upon the scene and Wayne was the man. There was quite the rivalry there between the two. And I talked to Wayne without Bob, and I talked to Bob without Wayne. And they weren't denigrating each other, but there was clearly a lot of competition between the two. And now fast forward to Preakness Week of 2025, and that was all water under the bridge. And it was pretty remarkable sitting in between the two of them talking about their friendship and their shared experiences.
And thank you for that, because it really was awesome to watch. Just, for Bob, knowing Bob how we know Bob out here on the West Coast, for him to be so heartfelt in an interview like that, because ever since, everything's gone on with Bob and Churchill Downs, he's kind of shied away from the media just a little bit. He's not quite the same as he used to be, and I can't blame him for that. It was good to see, and he had the utmost respect. I think there was a part, I'm pretty sure it was on NBC, that I saw of like Wayne tying his tie for him.
Yes.
And making sure his pocket square was straight. And it was just those little nuances. It was just really cool to see kind of a side of the pair of them, almost like father and son, that you wouldn't ordinarily see. For me, that was really, really cool. And thank you for reminding me about that moment. But for me, without a shadow of the doubt, the moment that made it for me was this year's Breeders' Cup Turf and Willie Mullins winning with a horse that had been jumping. Cool. And the fact of how shocked he was that he won. It was almost like I remember watching the interviews when his son Patrick won the Grand National this spring. He was just shocked. Unbelievable. And the fact that Willie Mullins came over and won one of our biggest races, you bet your bottom dollar he'll bring 10 next year. 10 jumpers to run in every flat race that we have. And he'll probably win one of them. And now you look on, Ethical Diamond is by Otard. Okay? No one's ever heard of Otard. He stands for like nothing. He does apparently throw a good-looking horse. I'd never heard of him. His full brother just sold for 380,000 euros. Now, if he hadn't won the Breeders' Cup Turf in record time, that horse is probably selling for 10. And it was just a really cool moment to see a trainer who's so highly regarded over the jumps in Europe, in Ireland, in England, come over with one horse who's like a gazillion to one, should have been even bigger price, and win it. And to watch that just means that it could happen to anyone. I thought it was just absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
That was great. And the TDN Writers Room brought to you by our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds. West Point had a record-setting year in 2024, and they ended 2025 with quite the bang, with a win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies with Super Corridora. Other notable victories for West Point this year included the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby with Sandman. Shout out to Griffin Johnson there. The Grade 2 Red Smith Stakes with Cugino, and most recently the Knickerbocker Stakes with Ohana Honor. And don't forget, in the sales ring, right, West Point and Partners, also the owners of Flightline, who was the leading sire of yearlings with an average of around $750,000. 10 of Flightline's yearlings sold for $1 million or more. Can't wait to see Flightline's 2-year-olds run in 2026. For more information on being a West Point partner, you can check out www.westpointtb, as in thoroughbred.com.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
Well, that's a wrap on this show. I hope everybody liked what we did. A little bit something different, but I had a lot of fun. I know it looks like Zoe and Randy did as well, and I hope the listeners and viewers did as well. I want to thank the team that makes this show go in the background. Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, Leah LaRocca, and Sue Finley. They're our producers and directors. They do an absolutely phenomenal job. And of course, where would we be without my brilliant co-hosts, Randy Moss and Zoe Cadman? Knowledgeable, fun, and great to work with. So we've enjoyed really doing these podcasts through this year. Everybody have a great holiday, and we'll see you again soon.